Good evening. Welcome to WSBI, your resource for success podcast program, where you get to meet inspiring women-owned businesses from across the country. And now, for your host, Kimberly McLemore.
All right. Good evening and welcome to WSBI, your resource for success podcast program, where you get to meet inspiring entrepreneurs and women-owned businesses from across the country. I am your host, Kimberly McLemore, CEO and founder of the Women's Small Business Initiative, LLC, and an award-winning author. And welcome to another night of sharing. With us, we have writer, teacher, and performer Robert Andrew Wagner. As frontman and chief songwriter lyricist for the Little Wretches, Robert Andrew Wagner wrote a wave of notoriety that led the band to the forefront of the underground music scene in Western Pennsylvania. In 2020, he released Undesirables Anarchists, which spawned an iTunes chart-topping single and received airplay on more than 115 North American AM/FM radio stations. His new album is an acoustic concert recording, live at the Mattress Factory, songs from the land of pit bulls and poker machines. So without further ado, please help me welcome to my platform, Mr. Robert Andrew Wagner. Hey, Robert, how are you?
I'm doing great, Kimberly. Thank you for having me on your show.
Well, it is my pleasure, and I'm excited about having the opportunity to talk to you and learn about all that you've been doing. And, you know, you have a plethora of information as a writer, teacher, and a performer. So it's going to be real exciting to hear your journey. But before we go down that path, why don't you tell my listeners just a little bit more about who Robert Andrew Wagner really is?
Oh, my. Well, you being the Women's Small Business Initiative, I am clearly not a woman. And I wish I had with me on this call one of my bandmates in the Little Wretches, Rosa Colucci, who, if the world was coming to an end and you had to call on one person to save it, Rosa would be the person you would call on. I wish she was here. I'm the descendant of Eastern European immigrants. My grandmother came to the United States thinking that she was being sent to go to college. And she was met at the train station by the man who announced himself as her husband. It was an arranged marriage. Oh, wow. She could have been an engineer. She could have been a doctor. She could have been anything. She claims to have been the first female crane operator in the history of United States Steel. But one thing she valued, even though she went to her grave not being able to read English, she valued learning and education. She passed that on to my mother. My mother could have been a doctor, again, a brilliant, outgoing woman. But in her generation, women didn't become doctors; they became nurses. So my mother worked as a nurse. But the sense of service, public service, helping others, and improving yourself through learning and through education, she passed that on to me. And a lot of people, I'm a musician and a songwriter, and in my field, in the world of folk music, you'll hear a lot of these songwriters refer to, I did like my daddy done. Yeah. But when I was raised, it's like, you are going to do better than your father did. You do not want to be like your father. You want to achieve more and go further than your father. And that was always kind of instilled in me and my extended family, is that we're expected to make something out of our lives. And as we climb, we reach back and pull others up with us. For me, I'm a talented writer and I love music, and I saw that I felt like I could have an impact by telling stories, and I tell stories through songs. I feel that for me, that gives me the biggest opportunity to make an impact on somebody's life. So that's, the name of my, lifelong project is the Little Wretches. Blessed are the meek, blessed are the poor in spirit, and so on, the Beatitudes. That's us, the Little Wretches.
Wow. That was profound. I mean, everything you just said in the last few minutes was very profound. I love your spirit. I love how you honor the women in your life. And I think that's important, that everything that you just talked about was, shown to you, was given to you in a way that where you grab onto it and you took it. And now here you are sharing it, not just as an educator, but your education is also coming through your music as well. So your journey has obviously been very open-minded and understanding. And now, you are doing something that you love, which is singing. And you have been obviously doing this for a while, and you have your band and everything. But talk about the journey for you personally, what it took for you to decide that you really wanted to get into songwriting and into music as a whole.
Well, see, that's so hard when you're, and I've listened to some of your discussions with other people on podcasts, and it seems like a lot of people who become entrepreneurs, we're actually from the proverbial other side of the tracks. I don't have people in my family who are entrepreneurs. I don't have people in my family who are performers. So for me, this was entering an entire, wanting to do something and having no contacts in that world whatsoever, but having been instilled with the confidence from my mother that I could do whatever I set my mind to, and there could be no stopping me if I believed in myself. But at an early age, I don't know how I learned this, but I knew that I could move people with the word. I just had a knack for it, or maybe I was just reinforced in the right way at the right time. But I knew through writing I could make people drop what they were doing and pay attention. Mm-hmm. And then nothing was ever more fun than music. But when I went to college, which I was lucky enough to do, I kind of resigned myself to having to be a poet or a playwright, because I didn't think that I could sing. I didn't think I had the social skills or the networking ability to, make a life for myself in the music business. So that's really what I wanted to do. But right around that time, an artistic movement that became known as punk rock happened, where people with no experience and no, not necessarily even any talent, kind of got a license to get up on stage. So I had you might think of it as an apprenticeship of 2 or 3 years through the punk rock scene. Mm-hmm. And when that kind of came to a close, I realized my forte is still writing. I need to study the art of songwriting and storytelling through songs and build what I do around my ability and find a way, every picture needs a frame. Every story needs a context. Mm-hmm. So, I need to build my project around my abilities, because I'm not even really good enough to change what I do to suit somebody else's model. I have to, build the frame around what I'm able to do. It's a little bit like the 3 Little Pigs. Do I build my house of straw, sticks, or bricks? I work with what I have and do the best with it. And I figured out how to do that. I've learned that I'm competing against people who might have more talent than I have, might have more resources than I have, but I can control how hard I work, and I can control how I use my resources. So we as a band, we've always been super productive. We've made award-winning albums for amounts of money that other people would spend on demo recordings. When I hear how much other artists spend for their products, like, well, that's so wasteful. If you did it right, you could spend much less and have a much greater impact. And then the other thing too is just that's striving for perfection. You have to balance the idea. I need to be productive. I want to be excellent, but I can't not be productive. So I'm not going to compromise on my message, but I'm going to work within my budget and do the best that I can with that budget, and I'm going to produce something. I'm not going to say, well, I couldn't compete with Beyonce, so I'm not going to compete. Right. I'm going to get in the game with what I have.
Right.
So that's I'm not sure if I answered your question.
You did. You did, and then some. But, the thing that I like when I'm listening to you talk, Robert, is how, first of all, thank you for listening to my podcast. That's important to me, and I really appreciate that you taking the time to do so. And then I think about what you were saying about your mom. Your mom was a huge inspiration in your life. And the thing that I loved about your mom is the fact that she told you can be whatever you want to be. And I think that's the most important part. Like you said, everybody has, we all have certain talents, but it's what you decide to do with that talent. It's what you decide how, the quantity of it, the quality of it versus just the quantity of it, and how much money you're spending, the lessons and that you teaching yourself and how other people can learn from that is what's most important. There's too many people I find today, especially today, because we have this thing called instant gratification, which I've been probably saying for the last 20 years, but it seems to be more profound today, simply for the fact that everything is instantaneous for these younger generations coming in today. They want it right now. People can listen to the music right now. They can be whoever they want to be, but at the same time, they're being who they should not be or who they're not as individuals, because there's so many people trying to copycat what's out there because they can. So, when I listen to you talk about the fact that, your music is your music. When you write for a purpose. And that's the thing that sticks out in my mind the most as I listen to you speak. And like you said, it's not always about how much money you're spending. It's that quality that you're putting in and the time that you're putting in order to make sure that song is what it should be. So, I think that what you're doing is awesome. And I like the fact that you have that old school spirit of realizing that this is the real world and this is the things that I want to talk about and I want to share. So in your music, when you're writing, are you focused on what is happening today or what used to happen, or how do you see the future?
Oh, well, that's hard. Really, I think what shaped my kind of artistic worldview is when I was little, our family would always gather for holidays, Christmas, Easter, or whatever. And my favorite thing, I would always like to eavesdrop on the adults, especially my grandparents. They'd always be talking philosophy and politics. And the first job I ever got was actually through my grandmother. She, like I said, she could have been an engineer, but she was managing like a tailor shop, like a sweatshop. There was a store that it was called American Discount Clothing. And what the owner would do is he would buy defective merchandise, and he had all these immigrants down in the basement that would alter everything to fit. Mm-hmm. So they're Hungarians, Greeks, Venezuelans, people of all these ethnicities. And what they used to do is they would go home. Now, again, this is my first job. I'm like 17 years old. These people would go home, watch public television, and come to work. And as they worked, they would talk about politics and what they saw on the news. Mm-hmm. And I would eavesdrop on these conversations and think, these are the most brilliant people I've ever met. Nobody would expect them to be so well informed and so thoughtful. I wish I could record these conversations and share them with the world. So that sort of became my forte, would be eavesdropping on other people's conversations and transcribing them. And I had almost like, how people have photographic memories. Mm-hmm. I had like an audiographic memory. I could eavesdrop on a conversation and kind of remember it syllable for syllable. Which I later learned is the playwright August Wilson, who's from this, I'm from Pittsburgh, he was from Pittsburgh, where he's a little older than me, but that's what he used to do as well. He spent a lot of time going to bars and coffee shops and just hearing the language and hearing the way people spoke and trying to capture that with his writing. Now, obviously, he's one of the greatest playwrights, probably the greatest American playwright of the 20th century, and I'm just a guy who writes songs. But that's really what got me, what kind of drove me to want to be a storyteller. I mean, it's presumptuous to think that I can tell somebody else's story, mm-hmm. but these are people who don't. They're not going to. I don't know. They don't have a voice of their own. They have a voice, but nobody's hearing it. So in some ways, I'm just amplifying their voices, and the voices and even the songs that resonate with me. Again, it comes back. It's almost like a religious thing. Amazing Grace. I once was lost, but now I'm found. The stories. A lot of people who are not people of faith will listen to some of my stuff and say, "Oh, it's so negative. It's so negative." Like, no, it's negative if you presume that I'm writing about people who are struggling and fighting. But the subtext is I'm writing about the spirit that drives them. Yeah, they have to struggle. Yes, they encounter difficulty, but they don't quit. And that's what I'm really writing about, is that spirit of perseverance, that spirit of hope that is indomitable. And hopefully that comes across. I mean, it clearly comes across to enough people that I'm able to continue doing it. But it's not something that the average person is going to get. Like, if you're looking for feel-good music, you're probably going to go to something else. But I guess if I could describe myself as anything, I'd be the August Wilson of rock and roll songwriters.
Hey, well, there's nothing wrong with that, but I like the fact that, you're being honest, you're authentic. You want to tell the stories. And like you said, you're a voice for somebody else who may not know how to get that voice out there so they can be heard. There's many people like that. It's no different than what I do. That's a big part of what we're about with my business with WSBI. It's about us as women and as men learning how to get our voice out there, catapult it. We need to be heard in our own way and in our own terms, but also uplifting somebody else, because there's always somebody else out there that can resonate with what you're saying. And it's no different than with your music. There's somebody out there who's resonating with that music that you're playing because you've heard those stories. And for you to be able to replicate that into music, that's important. So, I like what you're doing. You definitely have heard your music, and I can't wait to share it this evening, which we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But I want to talk about how 2020 panned out for you. Obviously, we spent so much time, being at home, and then that's also time to rethink, to reanalyze, and also to be creative. What was your creativity like in 2020?
Well, I almost had the opposite of experience of everybody else, in the United States during the COVID pandemic. Because, most performing artists, make their money through touring and merchandise sales, but nobody was able to tour during 2020. So that kind of leveled the playing field and gave me a chance to really get in the game. You mentioned in the bio that we had an album that became successful. We had several songs that got a lot of attention and kind of put us on the map, which, I took the opportunity in that time off to get a lot of my music that had been recorded but not released. I was able to get it mastered, get it, make it available through, all of the outlets, everything from Spotify to YouTube to, Apple Music and all of that. So we were able, I took that time to get the work out and get enough interest to justify making more music and releasing more music. So for me, 2020 gave me a chance to really get in the game at a much higher level than I was in it before. That's so I'm also a trauma survivor a little bit too. So I'm somewhat comfortable in chaos when everybody else is struggling. It's like, oh, well, welcome to my world. Now we're on a level playing field. Now I have the advantage.
Right.
So I was pretty happy with 2020. I'll be happy when all of this pandemic stuff is over, of course.
Right.
But it worked. It worked in my favor.
Right. And it also sounded like it gave you that opportunity, like you said, to get things done that you hadn't been able to do, because like I said, we're constantly running, and when you're in the business that you're in, you're used to having to be out more in the public eye. So, that was that time frame, like I said, to get things done that you probably hadn't had time to do, and then, like I said, become a little bit more creative in your own right. So, like I said, a lot of people they didn't like 2020. It was a downtime for some people. Some people actually elevated and others didn't. But, I think that what people really need to understand is the thankfulness out of it, and understand and realize that even though, yes, we are still going through some of the same things today, there's still that time and that opportunity to rethink life and to continue to move forward and learn from what we have gone through in 2020. The challenges that we had to make and how we had to change and step up at a pace that you may not have been used to. And then, of course, like some people went the complete opposite way, and not understanding that this really was a blessing in some ways to be able to take that time that you need in order to elevate yourself, to relax a little bit, to get your unwind, do the things you said you haven't been able to do, spend more time with your family that you hadn't seen, even though you're in the same household, so there's all those little things that we sometimes take for granted. I think those are some of the opportunities that you could take that positiveness, during the time frame that we were not able to, leave our homes for 4 or 5 months, in that case. So, beyond the 2020, you're out here now, we're back kind of getting some of these things are kind of back to normal. So talk about some of the new things you have going on with your music, and if you have any, things coming out as far as, concerts or anything in the rest of this year, and also coming up in 2022.
Well, the biggest thing for me, I've been for a long time, for probably about a decade, I've been working on a batch of songs that I've called the collection. I call it Red Beets and Horseradish. Mm-hmm. Now, that's a symbolic. It's sort of a dish that people of Eastern Europe eat around the holidays for Passover or for Easter. Okay. Depending on your ethnicity, the red of the beets is either symbolic of the blood of our people or the blood of our Savior, or if you're Jewish, it's not representative of blood at all. It's just there for flavor. And then the horseradish is representative of the bitterness of our suffering or the bitterness of his suffering. Mm-hmm. It's so all this is a group of songs that are all about, how to say this, people who are sick, old, crazy, or that's on the surface. It's about the spirit that sustains them. And so I've been writing this and kind of working on it for a long time. And in the past year, I've been recording this collection of songs. We just finished the vocals this past weekend, and it'll be released in March of 2022. We're going to try to release it on Ash Wednesday, kind of a symbolic release date. Mm-hmm. So that for me is trying to follow up the success of Undesirables and Anarchists and the success of the live acoustic album. This is the best writing I've ever done, and now I'm in a position to build off the success of the past year and a half. When you're trying to build a business, one of the first things you learn is the customer won't buy from you if he doesn't like you, and people tend to like what they already know, or somebody. There's sort of this network of people. I recommend somebody to you. If you enjoy doing business with that person, you recommend that to somebody else. So in the past year, I've established a little bit of a network now that I can build off of. And like I said, a lot of us entrepreneurs, we begin on the other side of the tracks, and we're looking over and we're saying, what do I have to do to become part of that, to be accepted among those people over there? I'm looking through the window, but I'm on the outside. I see them in there. I know that if I get in there, they'll like me, but how do I get in? Mm-hmm. So I'm kind of in a position now where I think I know some of the people inside there, and it's going to be easier for me to get invited to the party. And it's what I have to offer you know how you can't show up empty-handed. You got to show up with some food or some drink when you're coming to the party. I know that what I'm bringing to the party is something that nobody else will be bringing. So you might not like it, but you're not going to get it from anybody but me. So I've cornered the market on Little Wretchedness.
Well, hey, everybody.
I have the monopoly on my business.
There you go. And that's the key. And for those who are listening, that is going to be the key with anything, you know, in business. It's about, you know, what are you bringing to the table? How do you stand out better than the others? And, you know, and how different are you? So, you know, that's the key. And, you know, that what you just talked about is profound. And it's really some great lessons learned for those who are talking about and leading into wanting to go into business. And now that we're kind of jumping into that, I want to ask you, and I want you to tell the listeners, what advice would you give when it comes to business? And especially in the music industry. It's very different in some ways than what it was early on in music because we didn't have the technology and stuff that we have today. But what lessons would you like to share with the listeners when it comes to getting in the business of music?
Well, you know, I'm fortunate to have come from like what used to be a provincial backwater. I'm from Western Pennsylvania. Pittsburgh is where I'm from. Mm-hmm. The Pittsburgh that people know now is not the Pittsburgh that I grew up in. What I grew up in would have been considered a Rust Belt city, an industrial city that was going down. And now people think of Pittsburgh as hospitals and universities and robotics and Google. So, but I knew when I started out that I couldn't be chasing fads or trends, because if something became a fad in Pittsburgh or a trend in Pittsburgh, it was already 5 years old. It had been in New York City 5 years ago. So, you know, we have to try to do something that's of lasting value. So we can't be chasing fads or trends. We have to do something that's going to maintain its value over the years, over the decades, across generations. So we want to make a product that's going to last. And in order to do that, we really have to find, you know, our own unique individual, something that makes us special, you know, rather than be like everybody else. We have to stress what makes us unique. The technology has worked to our advantage in that when we were first starting out, I could find a way to record music inexpensively, and it was the artwork and the manufacturing that cost the bulk of money. But now we have digital distribution. It doesn't cost anything. You don't have to pay for any plastic. You don't have to pay for any paper. So in that regard, I can compete with the world. Now, of course, I'm a needle in a haystack, but so is everybody else. And some kid in New Zealand or some music lover in Poland or somebody in Japan, I'm one click away from them. If they're looking, you know, they say, seek and ye shall find. Right. People can find what I'm doing. So from a technology standpoint, we're very well positioned. We can produce, we can reach our potential customers so much more easily than ever before. But it really does come back to it, as you said, having your own message and having your own identity. It helps for people to be able to find you. So for us, it's happened at a good time that, you know, we have a catalog of, you know, 12, 13 previously released albums. So what I'm kind of banking on from a business standpoint is somebody who discovers us through one of our new releases. They go back and then they buy the entire back catalog. So there are going to be people who like a song here or like a song there. Right. But then there's other people that they're going to end up getting everything we ever made. And that's, I think, what we're looking for. Is we're looking for the hardcore fans who, you know, this could be a life-affirming or a life-changing experience when they find our music. But the music business itself, just like any other business, everybody, you know, there's a lot of copycatting that goes on. Some people go for fast money, but that's never been an option for me. You know, we're playing long term. If you have any quit in you, don't even bother getting started. Just assume, like any other business, you're going to lose money for at least 3 years, maybe longer. And if you have any quit in you, just quit. Go work for somebody else. If you plan to do this, everything takes longer than you think it will take.
Right.
You have to have patience, and you have to have faith, and that kind of. If you ever been to Kitty Hawk down in North Carolina, where the Wright Brothers Memorial is, I think the slogan on the Wright Brothers Memorial is dauntless resolution and unconquerable faith. And that's what you have to have. You have to look for opportunity everywhere. And when you face rejection or you experience failure, you just have to take that as a lesson that makes you stronger and makes you better. But if you have any quit in you, you're not going to make it.
Mm-hmm. Wow. No truer words spoken.
That was my rant. I'm sorry, Kimberly, I'm ranting. But.
No, it's fine. It's authentic, and I like what you're saying. I mean, a lot of times when you hear people say, especially then when you're talking about, well, if you have any quit in you, just quit. A lot of people would go against that and be like, no, you shouldn't quit. You should keep going. But why would you keep going if that's not where you know you need to be? And I think that's the key there is understanding who you are, what your real purpose is. And like I said, if you're chasing money, then, you're going to fail. You may get started well, but are you going to last? And that's the key with anything. And in any business, you truly need to understand and know your purpose, and everything else will follow and will come with it. But if that's not the lane you need to be in, you need to know that as well, so that you can move forward into something else that you are truly good at and that you really should be doing. And, it's no different than, even though you have the blessing of being able to sing and songwrite, there are some people who may be just good songwriters but can't sing. It's just understanding and knowing who you really are, so that you can continue to move forward in whatever that dream may be that you have, and make that a reality. So Robert Andrew Wagner, it has been a awesome time to sit here and talk to you. We could probably talk for hours, because I love to listen to you and what your story and your background. You shared a lot of great nuggets tonight with us, and I definitely appreciate that. Before we end the show this evening, could you tell the listeners how they can get a hold of you and how they can reach out to listen to your music?
Well, this is old-fashioned, but the best way is just to go to our website, www.littlewretches.com. No, just Little Wretches, and that's, of course, Wretches with a W, WRETCHES, littlewretches.com, or find us on Facebook or YouTube. Our music is everywhere, and we're very accessible. If you message us or post a message at our website or post a message at one of our YouTube videos, we'll probably respond to you within a day or so personally. So we're out there. It's easy to find us in that regard. That's I think I answered the question. I'm going to be quiet now.
It's fine. You did. Thank you so much. And again, like I said, I appreciate you coming on, Robert, and spending some time with me. It has been a pleasure. And we have a little treat for everyone. And I'm going to real quickly ask you, give us a little summary of what All My Friends is all about, the song.
Well, every line of the song is about a very specific personal experience for me. But, of course, once you make it, others will listen to it and make of it what they will be. But it's sort of just a summary of the world of the Little Wretches, people who are on the outside, people who find a way to get by, even though society kind of gives them the elbow and says, you're not one of us. We don't like you. You don't belong. And but I'm going to stick around and make the best of it anyhow. So, and the refrain, it finishes with the line, someday, because we won't quit.
All right. All righty then. Okay, Robert, again, thank you for coming on our show this evening. And then, like I tell you, everybody, I said earlier that we're going to have the opportunity to listen and hear the song All My Friends. And, really tonight, our discussion is all about the journey of life and how life really can be turned into music, because everything we do in life has a lesson that comes with it. And whether you're a part of that or you're not a part of it, that's up to you. but there's always somebody who's out there listening. And we have this one individual who's taking that advantage, who's listening to what's everything that's around him and giving us the joy of music that we can listen to. So again, like I tell everybody, if there's something that you want to do, think about what it is that you want. Think about what affects you in life, and then take that step forward. Because if you don't take the step forward, you're never going to be able to get where you want to be if you're constantly staying stagnant. So when you're ready to have that conversation, you know you can reach out to me anytime at Kimberly at WSBILC@gmail.com. And let's chat about those dreams. Let's turn those dreams into actual goals. And of course, if you want more of your resource for success, we are now taking monetary donations to support the podcast. And all the Cash App information will be in the DM below, that you can DM us, or in all the information below, or you can directly go to the website at www.wsbilc.com and you can send your donations directly through there. Again, we would like to thank you all for listening to us tonight. We will be back next week with more amazing guests. Be sure to follow us on iHeartRadio or wherever you listen to your podcast. But until then, enjoy your evening and good night.
Turned into fanatics with terrible secrets hidden up in their attics. Closets full of skeletons and old bones they only bring out to play with when nobody's home. All of my friends are on some kind of list of undesirables and anarchists. It's not even safe to admit that you're one of my friends. All of my friends know cause and effect. They're notably known for abuse and neglect. We're natural targets, we're perfect to blame. None of my friends ever runs out of shame. All of my friends are taking some kind of rap, but your biggest weapon is your handicap. Nothing much good ever happens to none of my friends. Carving a niche between the dust and the ether, walking in circles, limping along. I'm stuck in a ditch, but I'm a believer. I don't know much except right from wrong. Oh, what comedy! Oh, what torture! Oh, what stories we will tell someday, someday. Ever has to lose face. We're walking in beauty, we're walking in grace. We're marching like sheep to the slaughterhouse blade. We're the prize-winning herd at the Macy's parade. None of my friends ever made the first team. If you're going to hell, gotta go to extremes. Gently down the stream, no, none of my friends. Vanguard of vultures in rarefied air. With the high priest of culture, we kneel down for a prayer for the lesbian couples and their turkey basters, and the amateur connoisseur, the cyanide tasters. All of my friends, the wind scattered and blown, never get too close to the foot of the throne. But they're the best people I've ever known. Carving a niche between the dust and the ether, walking in circles, limping along. Stuck in a ditch, but I'm a believer.